From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
The cattle market remains hot. Here are the latest record box beef prices as Congress continues to mull what can be done to bring competition to the cattle market.
We must consider ways to roll back the mergers that created this consolidation.
Other farmers pray for rain.
The range in the Midwest is from 35% very short to short.
Could areas in need of moisture see some anytime soon? We have an update right now on AgDay. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. It's really starting to dry out in the Corn Belt. And with little to no moisture forecast for the area, the situation may only grow worse. Taking a look at the latest root zone moisture map, you can see if we go back 1 month, shortages start to show up in Iowa, into Nebraska, and Oklahoma. There are also issues growing in the north central part of the country into Illinois, Michigan, and Indiana. So topsoil across the country are continuing to get drier as well. Nationally, 46% of topsoil is reported as being short to very short moisture. That's up 2% from last week. Midwest topsoils particularly are hard hit.
The range in the Midwest is from 35% very short to short in North Dakota, your so-called wettest state in the Midwest, all the way up to 91% in Michigan.
Now, every Midwest state east of the Mississippi is reporting 70% of its topsoil as being short to very short, and the dryness extends into the mid-Atlantic, with Maryland 96% short to very short. And Brad Rippey says dryness is also starting to crop up in the Pacific Northwest. Now, one crop that's been dealing with a lack of moisture all season long, the winter wheat crop. Right now, 38% of that crop is rated good to excellent. That's actually up 2% from last week. 31% rated poor to very poor. That's a slight improvement over last week's 34%. Meanwhile, 8% of the winter wheat crop has now been harvested. That's 1% ahead of average. Well, in Louisiana, combines are rolling in wheat fields across that state, and so far, producers seem pleased with yields. LSU Ag Center correspondent Craig Gautreaux says farmers are planting soybeans right behind the combine.
With temperatures rising and humidity levels lower than usual, Louisiana wheat farmers are blazing across their fields to bring in this year's crop.
We've been having some very dry weather lately. It could be said it's impacting our other crops, but in terms of wheat harvest, I think it's really accelerating it.
Jeffrey Bordelon was harvesting his wheat and was pleased with the results. For the most part, the weather was good during both the growing season and harvest.
I think it had a fairly good growing season this year. It could have done without that last freeze we had, but this was a little bit later maturing variety, so I think it actually came through it pretty well.
After Bordelon completes his harvest, his plan is to plant soybeans, but that decision is weather dependent.
I'm undecided at the moment, depending on the weather. If we get some good rain and I can plow it and fix the ground, I will. If not, I'm just going to till it and plant wheat again on it this coming fall.
While the grain can be used to make food products, the straw also has a purpose.
In some years, it can be used and bought as an erosion control from the different highway contractors. We've had that along with our rice straw.
Wheat acreage across Louisiana is not as high as it once was, but a good year like this one may encourage more farmers to use it as a rotational crop. With the LSU Ag Center, this is Craig Gautreaux reporting.
And as we said, this dryness may be sticking around for several more days. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht shows us the reasons why.
Yeah, Clinton, wanted to take a quick moment and give you an idea on kind of why we are seeing another dry pattern across the Midwest. And really simply, where you see this ridge building, this line go up to the north, this really suppresses the atmosphere, limits the amount of lift in the atmosphere. Where we have a lot of lift is in and around this circle, this upper level low. As that moves off to the east on Friday and Saturday, it's being replaced by this ridge. Big ridge, not a lot of moisture or lift in the atmosphere, limits a lot of the rain chances. So the overall trend, especially into the Midwest and back here to the west, are limiting the big systems that bring us kind of the nationwide rainfall, which we saw a little bit on Sunday and again on Tuesday. That is going to be shut off for the next couple of days. By the weekend, though, another weak piece of energy will try to move through, and hopefully we'll get some rain coming out of that system. Again, that's the jet stream look on Sunday. Let's go and take a look at what's going on in West Tennessee. This is sent in by Bobby. Look off in the distance there. Now that's my kind of thing. Those are towering cumulonimbus clouds in the background there. Looks like they are probably dying. There's an anvil in there as well off in the distance, but the fuzzy outside of the clouds means that most of those are probably done producing rain. And we're off to another great day in West Tennessee. Bobby again snapping this photo of his livestock starting the day. We'll talk more about your extended forecast where we could see some cumulonimbus clouds in the future in just a bit.
In California, boaters, anglers, campers, and farmers are enjoying a new view of Lake Oroville. According to the state's Water Resources Department, the reservoir is once again full just 1 year after being at half capacity. You can see the change in these satellite pictures. The department says runoff from the state's historic rainfall and snowmelt has caused the lake level to rebound to near 100%. In fact, strategic releases are being employed to ensure there's room for further snowmelt runoff. Now, the problems with consolidation in the meatpacking industry were amplified during COVID, and the topic continues to be the focus of congressional hearings. This time, it was a House Judiciary Subcommittee. AgDay's Michelle Rook looks at some of the solutions lawmakers are considering.
Clinton, federal lawmakers continue to be alarmed about the lack of competition in the nation's meat processing sector. As a result, they're offering legislative fixes that would level the playing field for small processors, but also ensure food safety. A House Judiciary Subcommittee is looking at the long-standing monopoly in the beef and pork processing industry.
Less than 10% of the facilities in the United States process over 95% of all cattle. And less than 5% of facilities in the U.S. process over 90% of all hogs.
To combat it, lawmakers say small processors need more market access. The PRIME Act would allow state-inspected facilities to have federal equivalency to allow them to sell across state lines.
The Bipartisan Processing Revival and Interstate Meat Exemption Act, or PRIME Act, is one of the proposals that would increase competition and enhance consumer choice.
Small processors testified about this and other regulatory barriers that are stifling their growth and others from entering the business. They also provided solutions.
If we want successful local and regional food systems, we need subsidy reform, antitrust enforcement, truth in labeling, and inspection reform. And we must support the infrastructure with government purchasing.
Yet other lawmakers think there's a better way to tackle the problem.
We must consider ways to roll back the mergers that created this consolidation, explore methods of supporting smaller meat processors, and increase oversight where possible to rein in abusive and deceptive practices. What we should not do is consider rolling back meat inspection requirements that keep our food safe.
However, consolidation has been growing for many years and may be difficult to reverse even with legislation. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Russian President Vladimir Putin says his country is once again considering withdrawing from the Black Sea grain deal. He claims it's because the West has cheated Moscow by not implementing promises to get Russian ag goods to world markets. Now, the UN Secretary General saying earlier this week he was concerned that Russia would quit the deal, which has been extended to July 17th. Russia is specifically asking the Russian Agricultural Bank be reconnected to the SWIFT payment system and that supplies of ag machinery and parts to his country be resumed. The grain deal was brokered last summer in an effort to prevent a global food crisis caused by the war in Ukraine. And help for farmers in Ukraine continuing to come in. The Howard G. Buffett Foundation is launching another program to provide winter oil seeds to small Ukrainian farms in the region most affected by Russia's invasion. The program is partnering with Corteva to make it happen. Now, we've been keeping you updated on Buffett's efforts to help the country. He says the invasion has left many Ukrainian farmers, particularly smaller farms, unable to access the inputs they need to plant their crops. He says this partnership with Corteva will help farmers access much-needed seed supplies. Now, the soybean markets surged on Tuesday, but things were much quieter on Wednesday. We'll have details coming up next. And speaking of prices, food inflation is at least slowing down according to the latest report. We'll serve up the latest numbers in the country.
AgDay is brought to you by EndZone from Farm Shop MFG, which allows you to rehydrate your soybeans from 10 to 13%. On a 20,000 bushel bin, that's an extra semi-load added to your bottom line. Order your EndZone fan control now for as low as $2,900 while supplies last.
West Coast port operators and dock workers have agreed to a grace period as labor negotiations continue between both sides. Now, it comes after Labor Secretary-designate Julie Su mediated between both parties. She's trying to ease tensions and resolve job actions that have affected cargo handling. Experts say the major issue still dividing the two sides is wages, which has proven to be a significant obstacle in the talks. Pork industry leaders say shipping delays on the West Coast due to job actions are causing big problems for them. The Vice President of International Affairs for the National Pork Producers Council says even a delay of a day or two with fresh pork is a problem, and that they rely on tight timelines to get fresh product from the packing plant to some high-value markets like Japan. It was a much calmer day for grain markets Wednesday, while livestock saw solid movement, including a down day for feeder cattle. Michelle Rook returns with Markets Now.
Grains were mostly lower on Wednesday. Chuck Shelby with Risk Management Commodities joining us, and the grains obviously impacted by the weather, but do we have enough or the right amount of weather premium in these markets, Chuck?
Well, I think the market adjusted to the dry conditions in the Eastern Corn Belt. Going forward, as we look at each day's forecast, I think it's pretty critical that areas in the east start and get significant rainfall. So I think the market's going to take a pause here. Going forward, it will want to see more rain, but right now I think it's an equilibrium level that we've reached.
Of course, the market also saw some technical selling pressure as a result of running into some major chart resistance on Tuesday. What is it going to take here to retest those areas, do you think?
There are models that predict a decent amount of rain coming into the center part of Illinois, working their way into Indiana. If we come in here next week and we have seen a significant rain, I think that will temper the market. But if those rainfall amounts in the GFS model is correct, we really don't see any rain. I think the market next week will put some premium back in. Obviously, it's going to look at the end of the month forecast and certainly gets critical as we move forward, because we just have to have rain when we get to pollination and grain fill.
Yeah. Markets were also watching for the Fed decision. They're going to take a pause, but it looks like rate hikes in the future, and the market maybe reacted to that, at least the outside markets.
Yeah, a little bit. It was good to see they didn't raise the rates as far as a producer goes that borrows money. So it was a kind of a non-event once it happened. As we go forward, though, it's going to be, interesting to see how much they want to raise, what they really do. Did they take more pauses, or how much further up do they need to go to really stop inflation?
Yeah, it certainly does impact money flow, that's for sure. Thanks for joining us. Chuck Shelby with Risk Management Commodities. That's Markets Now. We'll have more AgDay coming up.
AgDay is brought to you by Lamar's Toy Store, the largest and most diversified farm toy store in the U.S. They have new and old and do restorations and customizations too. You need to see it to believe it. Visit lamarstoystore.com or call us at 712-546-4305.
You want to take a look at the flooding potential map going through our Thursday, Friday, and Saturday as that latest drought monitor was released. Not seeing a lot of relief, but what's interesting is that just the way the flooding potential map looks. You got a big line extending back down here to the south and into the southeast, and this mainly has to do with a low pressure system, a weak one at that, working to the east. Right along the fringe is where we have the best chance of rain. So you got the pocket, the low right here, with the ridge developing back out here to the west and moving to the east. So what you'll see is as that influence from the low decreases and moves to the east, it's going to drag that rainfall potential to the east as well. About a 5 to 15% chance of rain, or at least flooding potential going into our Friday and Saturday. Notice that we're not expecting any big systems like we talked about earlier. Thursday, Friday, or even into our Saturday as that ridge of high pressure will develop. So maybe a few isolated showers and thunderstorms, but in terms of big systems bringing a lot of rain across the nation, just not happening in the next 3 days or so. Now, we looked at the jet stream a little bit ago. I want to take this through the weekend and into next week. What we're starting to see is more north-south movement within the jet stream. little pieces of energy. That's what this is, trying to get a cutoff low going, which would bring some much needed rain across the Midwest. But what we want to see in terms of getting rain to drought-stricken areas is something like this. This is a lot more energy, and at the surface, once we get into Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll have to see how all this develops. But what we'd like to see is that low pressure system develop coming off of the Rockies, pick up some Gulf moisture, and come back up here into the plains and the Midwest. The jet stream, though, is supporting another dominant ridge across the plains, which means this energy, rather than going to the east, is going to be going more to the north and to the northeast. So the forecast overall now looks rather hot and dry across the plains and the Midwest in the extended forecast. Temperature outlook, here's June 19th to June 23rd. Hey, let's see what's going on in Moore, Montana, where we need more rain. A partly cloudy high of about 63 degrees, low of 41. Wheeling, West Virginia, mostly sunny, high around 79 degrees, low of 60. And then Tennessee, mostly sunny, high around 89.
Beef prices keep climbing. We've got the latest record-setting numbers next. And later, overall inflation, however, is on the decline as prices increase at a much slower rate. Details in the country.
Your next piece of equipment is on MachineryPete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on MachineryPete.com.
Higher prices continue to be the talk of the cattle industry right now. Earlier this week, choice box beef prices were reported at their highest price for the date ever, at more than $338. Now, what's continuing to push up those prices? Lower slaughter numbers, with 616,000 head of cattle processed as of last Friday. That's continuing to create tighter fed beef supplies. Now, for the first 20 weeks of the year, beef production is down 4.8% year over year. Drought has forced beef cow herd liquidation over the past several months, also impacting prices. And Darrell Peel of Oklahoma State University says recent improvement in remaining drought regions in the central and southern Great Plains likely means the herd liquidation is ending. But he says he still expects the beef cow herd numbers on January 1st of next year to be the low from which the industry will rebuild. He says the first step to stabilizing the herd is to cut beef cow slaughter and have a lower rate of cow culling. He says following record beef herd culling last year, slaughter is down 11.5% so far this year. A further sign, he says, that the liquidation is slowing. Now, he adds a good indication of herd expansion will be signs of heifer retention. As we said, fewer cattle are keeping those beef prices high, but price inflation is slowing down overall. We'll look at the latest numbers next.
In the Country on Ag Day is brought to you by Pivot Bio. What if you had the nitrogen you need already on seed? Pivot Bio is the first company to apply nitrogen on seed. The nitrogen you need, now on seed, from Pivot Bio. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
U.S. inflation continues to ease. Consumer prices in May rose at the slowest annual pace since early 2021. That's according to fresh data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Now, the new numbers show 11 straight months of slowing inflation. Mike Valerio reports.
What was once a rapid rise in prices from online shopping to the shell shock of buying eggs is now showing more signs of cooling, like a wildfire slowly contained.
It does appear as if those dousing of inflation fires, the efforts by the Federal Reserve, do appear to be working.
Mark Hamrick, senior economic analyst from Bankrate.com, says after more than a year of historic interest rate hikes from the Federal Reserve, those higher rates are helping to slow painful price spikes. New numbers out from the Labor Department today show consumer prices up 4% for the year ending in May. That's way down from more than 9% inflation last June.
Consumers still have a right to be irritated by the current state of prices. We see food still up year over year. And as we know, going to the grocery store, there could be things like beef that feel like that's too expensive. Maybe we're going to go to the chicken instead.
Gas prices are down broadly, but what we pay for electricity is still high. In terms of summer travel, hotel prices are climbing slower, and flying is getting a little cheaper.
Compared to a year ago, airline fares are down, but there's a sense that they are still elevated. Like a patient that needs to recuperate, I think Federal Reserve officials want to sort of stand back, make some observations about how the economy is handling all of that, which has been in some ways shocking.
In Los Angeles, I'm Mike Valerio.
All right, thanks, Mike. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clint Griffiths. Have a great day.